It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday with Andrew Brandt, the host of the Business of Sports Podcast, and we are presented, as always, by DraftKings. I love winners. Spread the word winner via social media. Sponsor confirmation email winner. I'm trying to give you a free Madden. I don't even know if anybody's even tried this week yet. It's Wednesday. 2 days from now, I am giving away a Madden to somebody that takes advantage of any of our sponsors over at rosstucker.com or just the ones you hear me say on the show. Keeps, LinkedIn, you guys hear me talk about them. Manly Bands, which I'll talk about today. And then the YouTube shout out I love. We're getting a lot more YouTube subscribers, which is exciting. YouTube.com/RossTuckerNFL. People like being able to see us. People like being able to just see the highlight clips of the other shows that they don't listen to on a regular basis. And we're getting a lot more patrons, a lot more tuckheads. Patreon.com/RT Media, like Chris Schaefer. I think a lot of them, quite frankly, probably just want to see our even money bets on paper in black and white. So I have to write them down while we're doing them during the show. I get it. Hey, I don't care what makes you a tuckhead. Just join the family. Patreon.com/RT Media. Speaking of the family, Andrew Brandt is a long time member of the family, and it's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, so Andrew Brandt is kind of a renaissance man. I think a lot of you know this already, but the guy climbs Mount Everest. He has a Sunday newsletter. He writes for Sports Illustrated MMQB. He's a professor. I guess are you a professor, Andrew, or do you need to have your doctorate to be able to call yourself a professor? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I am a professor. I am non-tenure track, right? So when people think of professor, they think of research articles and academia and getting tenure. That's not my jam. I want to do all the other things, and Villanova is great about letting me do all the other things. In fact, Ross, when they hired me, I said, "You sure you want me? Do you want to go get an academic that's going to be there all the time with the students and 100% focused?" And they said, "No, we want." And then they told me music to my ears, which is, "You're part of this. We like you better out there. You can you can do more for us out there than you can do sitting in an office at Villanova." So yeah, I'm a professor of practice. I'm executive director of the Morad Center. Jeffrey Morad put some money towards this program at Villanova. And that's my day job. And then I do all these other things.
Well, you know what's interesting? Two things. First of all, I really want to, do all the students call you Professor Brandt?
Not all, but most do, yeah.
Gosh, so I think that's cool. I would love to be Professor Tucker someday. I feel like I could be a professor of football or offensive line play or podcasts, but I think that's sweet to be called. I think being called professor is cool. Yeah. I think being called coach is cool. I would love to be called either one of those. At some point, maybe when I retire, maybe I'll be professor/coach.
You know what catches me off guard, Ross, is some people, because I guess to be a professor in most academia, I guess you need a doctorate. So sometimes people just call me doctor. And I'm like, who is he talking to? But I guess professors are, sometimes people listening know this, they are called doctors. But yeah, that really catches me off guard.
Yeah, doctor. So that's awesome. And by the way, Villanova is 1,000% correct. You're doing a lot more for them with all the media stuff you do than if you publish some article in some journal none of us would ever read. I mean, it's not even close. It's genius, actually, by Villanova. It's interesting, Andrew. It's a weird week. And by the way, Andrew, of course, is also, in addition to all the other stuff we talked about, of course, most importantly, he's the host of the Business of Sports podcast. And I think it's the best podcast of its kind. And it's a weird week, Andrew, because there aren't a ton of quote unquote business stories to talk about, but there are still things that I want to get your opinion on. One of which is USC firing head coach Clay Helton after 2 games, after your alma mater beat them. I guess there's a couple questions there. One that I have is, why would you even bring the guy back as coach if you were willing to fire him after 2 games, depending on how things went? And then number 2, it is uncanny. Andrew, I don't know if you've ever represented any coaches. It's unbelievable how many names get thrown out there for this job. And it will be comical to see how many guys end up getting raises as a result of the perceived USC interest.
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, we don't deal with this a lot. Thanks for mentioning my Stanford Cardinal. Put the nail in the coffin for Clay Helton. That was always one of the best moments in my 4 years at Stanford, Ross. I think once we beat USC. We beat UCLA, I think, twice while I was there. But they were powerful programs back in the 80s. So, yeah, there was a big moment again. And Stanford lost bad to Kansas State first week, and then they do this. Yeah, people are going to bring up names. I don't know why they brought him back. You know, the COVID year, everybody kind of gets a break. But it seemed like he was dead man walking over there at USC for a while, especially Chip Kelly now doing well at UCLA across town. Yeah, you'll see Urban Meyer's name. You'll see all these names come up. Urban Meyer's not going to get a raise from the Jaguars, but maybe others will. I always, this is like Black Monday in the NFL in January, Ross. I don't know. I guess we're all part of it, you and I. But it just seems a little bit weird and maybe sinister that the body's not even cold yet. And the replacement names are coming fast and furious. Now, people don't have a lot of sympathy for Clay Helton, but it always strikes me when firings are done in high-profile sports like football. Before you even get the news out that he's fired, it's like, who's next? I don't know. It always strikes me that way.
What are your thoughts on agents leveraging it to get more money?
Yeah, I think teams are smart, though. Like, is it real? Is there more to it than leveraging this SC job? Is there something going on? Are there other jobs that he's going to be in play for down the line? And where's the marketplace on his contract and others? It could be, from the team's point of view, a time to reassess the market. And, of course, get more years on the contract if that's something you want to do.
I also really appreciate your perspective on life. And you tweeted a video from Derek Carr after the game Monday night that I really enjoyed. It's gotten a lot of attention. And, we don't have to always be business here. I wanted you to be able to talk about why you found that so impactful.
I did. And then this as well as anyone, and everyone listening on social media knows this. Sometimes you put something out and you just don't know. And I am extremely active on social media, have a lot of followers, not as many as you, Ross, but I have a lot. And I'm floored by the response to that tweet. I'm floored. I don't get these kinds of engagements. Tens of thousands of retweets, hundreds of thousands of likes. That's not in my orbit. That's not, but it's happened. And here's the thing. Derek Carr is interviewed after the game. I was asleep. I saw it the next morning. And he used this bully pulpit of millions of people watching to talk a little bit about the play that won the game, but really praise the receiver. Praise Zay Jones. And Zay Jones has been through a lot. And he just kept talking about he's there at 6 a.m. This is about him. This is about hard work. Every time I ask 6 a.m., he's there. I'm like, wow. Of all the things he could have talked about in that moment, of all the things, talk about the fans, talk about Coach Gruden, talk about his offensive line, talk about himself. He talked about that receiver. It struck me, and so much of what I talk about with leadership and success is humility. And I tweeted that phrase. I just became a forever fan, right? I just became a forever fan of Derek Carr. I don't care how he plays. I don't care if he wins the Super Bowl or they go 2-15. I did because of that soundbite. Now, maybe that's too simplistic, but I've learned through my career, Ross, one of the real trademarks of success is humility. And I haven't always practiced that. But learning from that video, I think, is a great teaching moment. And so many retweets have said that.
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. I loved Derek Carr calling out Zay Jones like that. He said, every time I want to throw at 6 a.m., he's there. He's never missed one. I love that, and I'm glad that you spotlighted it. I'm guessing you did not love what happened to your Packers on Sunday, Andrew. I guess a lot of people that listen are fans of the Packers, fans of you. A lot of them are Packers faithful. I guess I just need to get more or less your reaction to what happened. I'll give you a blank canvas for that one.
Well, it's not good. It's a stinker. They've thrown up a couple of these over the years against the Chargers a couple of years ago, against the 49ers last year. And I know there's this thing about when they travel far, it's a problem. But yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Aaron. It's just one game. Now there's 16 left, not 15 left. And I would think they'll right the ship against the Lions. You mention it all the time, overreaction Monday. This lends itself to overreaction. I'm more impressed with how Sean Payton managed Jameis Winston than I am depressed about the Packers. Of course, I'm still a fan, as are my boys. I was checking on them Sunday night. Listen, it's not good, but here's what got me triggered, of course, is where these takes about Aaron's uncertain status of the offseason affecting the game. Come on. Like, something going on in April, May, June is going to affect a pattern or a play or a defensive snap on Sunday in September? Please. If anything, you look at people like TJ Watt or Dwayne Brown or Jamal Adams being a hold-in was that affecting anything in September? Of course not. And neither was this, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I would tend to agree. On the business front, one of the things that is happening, a lot of injuries week one. Lots of injuries, Andrew. And I guess if you could just take us through the process for a guy that was in the front office like you were when there's an injury, because it feels like there's a lot of parts to it. Number one, you got to make sure you have enough cap space for these injuries before the season. And number two, you put the guy on IR, you got to bring another guy on, you got to account for that in the budget, you got to find a new guy. Can you just kind of take us through what that was like when there were injuries when you were in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple with it happens during the game, and that was really my role because I don't have a lot to do during the game to affect the team performance, but something happens, get the word from the GM, we have our ready list, and either me or the pro personnel director would get on the phone with the agent to get someone in to replacement. Replacements at this time of year, any time of year really, are minimum contracts. Maybe there's a little bit of negotiation. But what's different, Ross, carrying over from the COVID year, which is so different than my era, IR is now a 3-week thing, right? In my day, IR is all year. So now you're making real determinations with the docs, and they're saying it's 4 or 5 weeks. Well, it could last to 9 weeks, and if it's 9 weeks, it's the season. And these are tough decisions, and I think it's a big benefit that it's only 3 weeks now, because now you have more roster management control, and you're putting someone down. You may get them back, in October. That's fine.
I think they're going to have a really tough time, Andrew, putting the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak, with the IR rules, with the expanded practice squad. I just, after doing it 2 years in a row, I think I'd be surprised if they reverted back. I think the 3-week IR thing is probably here to stay.
I think so. I think if COVID makes a disappearance, God willing, I don't know about the practice squad. I don't think they'll be carrying that many, but we'll see about that. Last thing I want to say on the business side, Ross, because it strikes me as the season started, two players that didn't do contracts, and they are Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. We have this 3-year window where you can do contracts after 3 years in the league, and pretty much every quarterback has had it. I know Dak Prescott went on a tag before it happened, but Carson Wentz and Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, and it happened with Josh Allen, but it didn't happen with those two. You and I talked about this before. Could be the teams just not ready to commit, and maybe the cautionary tales of Wentz and Goff. Could be the players saying the market's only going up. Could be the terms that maybe the teams want a Josh Allen 8-year deal. The players want more of a Dak Prescott 4-year deal. So I just find it fascinating that these two quarterbacks who've obviously proven themselves are not getting contracts. And I would think not the rest of the year.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about, there's this weird, these practice squad rules where they can have veterans on practice squad and they can move them up and down. I mean, the Patriots are moving their backup quarterback and starting kicker off and on practice squad each week. Like, they've once again found a rule. I don't think that this was the intention of being able to bump guys up. It was really for COVID. Being able to move guys off and on, being able to have vets on practice squad was really COVID related. And the Patriots, and look, I'm not blaming them, but they now bring up their backup quarterback and starting kicker off the practice squad on Saturday and put them back on there on Monday so that they can have essentially 55, 57-man roster.
I think you just said it. You put out these COVID rules and teams are smart, especially Belichick. How can we take advantage of this? How can we find a loophole? How can we do exactly what you just talked about? And the smart teams are doing that. It's the same with the cap. It happens every year. There are ways to get around the cap that teams have tried to leverage. You're right. And until the NFL sort of realizes this and puts a stop to it, which they probably won't, we're going to have that. I'm surprised more teams aren't doing it, frankly.
It's a really good point. Check him out on the Business of Sports podcast, his Sunday 7 newsletter, his MMQB column, and you can even try to enroll at Villanova if you'd like, so you can call him Professor Brandt. He's at Andrew Brandt on Twitter. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Ross. In the podcast this week, Colin Kaepernick, Dave Zirin of The Nation covered him more than anyone, comes out with a book this week. It's coming out. So I interviewed Dave all about the Kaepernick effect, both the past 5 years and what's going on now.
Oh, awesome. Interesting. I'll be looking forward to listening to that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Thank you to all of you, by the way, who have realized how awesome Manly Bands is. For so long, it was all about the ladies in our lives, right? Cut, clarity, carrot, color. Not so much really thinking about us and what we might want to wear on our hands. Manly Bands offers your hand the freedom to look how you want it in just about every type of earthly material imaginable. Manly Bands, they'll send you this ring sizer, which I did. And then after you get the ring sizer, you can pick what you want as your band. And they have all kinds of awesome materials: gold, wood, antler, steel, dinosaur bone, and even the meteorites that killed them. Once you've selected your band, Manly Bands offers free shipping worldwide and a 30-day exchange policy and a free warranty. I've told you guys before, I just like having a second band to change it up every once in a while. And my first band gets beat up from wearing it when I work out and stuff. So I'm glad I have this other band now that I can wear for nice occasions. To order your Manly Band and maybe get a Madden and get 21% off, plus a free silicone ring, go to manlybands.com/Ross. That's manlybands.com/Ross for 21% off. Manly Bands, the best darn rings, period.
Tux Takes.
Hey, Ross, lots of Saints news today. 8 members of the team, including 6 assistant coaches, 1 nutritionist, and a player, tested positive for COVID, while the team signed both center Austin Reeder and wide receiver Kenny Stills to the practice squad.
So the player that tested positive for COVID, I think, is Michael Thomas, who's already on PUP because they put Michael Thomas on the COVID list now. So he wasn't going to play anyway. But yeah, 6 assistant coaches. I don't know if any of them will be able to coach this weekend or not. That seems like a lot to me. 6 assistant coaches. Meanwhile, Eric McCoy is going on IR. Their starting center. He's out for at least 6 weeks, I heard. That's why they signed Austin Reiter. And then Kenny Stills, I think they just feel like they need more speed and explosiveness at receiver. It sounds like both of those guys will get bumped up from practice squad to active roster soon, but people kind of thought that, wondered that about Le'Veon Bell and Devontae Freeman, and it didn't happen.
Tux Takes.
Monday Night Football, a rough one as both teams lost starting guards for the season. The Ravens lost left guard Tyree Phillips. Raiders, Denzel Good.
Right. Good was playing right guard for them. So think about that for the Raiders now. They had a whole new right side of the line and center. Incognito didn't play left guard, and now their right guard's done for the year. So Jermaine Illuminor was playing right guard for them. Meanwhile, for the Ravens, Ben Cleveland is still on NFI. So they had Tyree Phillips starting. He's now done for the year. So now they got to go to Ben Power. So these teams are essentially going to like their third guards now at some of these spots in week 2.
Tux Takes.
A couple of other signings include the Colts inking safety Andrew Sendejo and the Jets bringing in linebacker B.J. Goodson.
Well, the Jets need bodies. B.J. Goodson's a guy that started a bunch of games for the Browns the last couple of years. Sendejo, it feels to me like Goodson and Sendejo are guys that maybe these teams wanted, but they just didn't want to have them on the opening day roster to fully guarantee their salary for the whole season. So they waited until after week 1 before they actually, brought them in and are going to sign them now.
Tux Takes.
2 other notes. You and Andrew already talked about Clay Helton being let go at USC. Anything else you want to add to that one? And also, Niners running back Raheem Mostert announcing that he is actually out for the entire season.
Brian, when you lived in LA, did USC feel like the pro football team was that clearly the team people cared the most about?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Because at that time, for the most of the time that I was out there, UCLA wasn't in the spotlight.
Right.
I mean, it was more USC just because of the time, I think.
Right. Well, so Mostert, I guess, realized that this surgery option he has is better for his long-term career, to get it repaired and let it heal rather than trying to come back in 8 weeks. As for the Helton thing, Eric Bieniemy's name already being mentioned. I think Eric would do an outstanding job there. And they kind of like having that, that NFL flavor to coach them at USC. They've had success with that. Obviously, Pete Carroll. A lot of people have success with Duralast Elite brake pads available exclusively at AutoZone. AutoZone knows what's up. Let's just get the best brake pads. Let's have them be sold exclusively here so everybody needs to come to us. I love it. Duralast parts have always been known to be proven tough. Literally, it's called Duralast. Well, Duralast Elite just takes that to another level. It lasts 3 times longer than a typical Duralast pad, which is crazy if you think about it, especially if you find yourself in a lot of stop and go traffic, which is the worst, Hopefully you listen to me while there's stop and go traffic, or if you typically drive with heavier loads in your car. They got this fancy protective hex pattern, which keeps them performing longer. What I like, because I've had squeaky brakes before, safer, smoother, and quieter stops. You're not constantly worried about them grinding down. The future of stopping starts with Duralast Elite brake pads, only at AutoZone. Let's get to an email, Brian.
Ever wanted to ask an NFL player a question? Well, here's your chance. It's time to Ask Ross.
So here's what I love, okay? I love when I get an email from you guys to ross@rosstucker.com, because it's either you sending me a sponsor you took advantage of, like Manly Bands, because you want to win the free Madden, or any of our sponsors. There's a lot of good ones. Or you took advantage of another sponsor and you just want to ask me a question, which I love. ross@rosstucker.com. Anytime you take advantage of a sponsor, and we got a lot of good deals with these people, DraftKings, use the code Ross, whatever it is, you get to ask me a question. What do you got, Brian?
Well, I got something from Michael Clark in San Diego. Hey, Ross, longtime fan here. I'm not even that into football anymore since my beloved Chargers left town. I love how your podcast, though, blend humor, insight, and more than a few life lessons. And I'd like to see Tony Robbins break down the cover, too. So my question for you, I had a chance to meet Chris Steelman at a golf tournament a few years after he retired, and he told me crazy things that he would do the day after a game, usually popping 8 Advils and then lying in bed for about 30 minutes before he could get up. So, Ross, you mind sharing what you would do after a game? Advil, ice, the soothing sounds of AC/DC?
It's from Michael Clark. Michael, your first comment there means a lot to me. That's really interesting that you're not that into football anymore, but you still listen to the show. That's quite the compliment. Humor, insight, and more than a few life lessons. Gosh, I guess I don't feel like I'm giving out life lessons, but the fact that some of you feel like I am, that means a lot. Look, my big thing is gratitude and positivity. Like I just think life's so much more fun that way. If you're thankful for the things you have, the people in your life, number one, and then number two, I think if it just what's the point of being negative? What's the point of complaining? It doesn't help you. It doesn't get anything done. As for your specific question, I don't know, man. I don't think I was as bad as other people were after games. I mean, I was sore and it wasn't easy to get up, but I'd get up and I'd usually go to the facility and I'd get a workout in. I'd get a lift in. You usually had to do two or three lifts a week. So I get a lift in, which the research says is the best thing to do. And then I'd go in the cold tub. And I mean, I was probably always taking some type of anti-inflammatory at that point in the season. Then I'd review the game tape, and that was it. Yes, I hear some of these horror stories. I guess I'm in a better place than a lot of these other guys were. As far as I think we're done here, shout outs. We'll go reverse order for one. Let's get wild. SteakhouseSports.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Vision Comics with an X, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing. We will have the Fantasy Feast podcast today. Make sure you check out, and of course, there's 2 parts to that. Make sure you check out Even Money. Steve and I both got off to a great start this year. And College Draft podcast. Emory was 4-0 on his college football picks last week. So we got a good thing going to start the year here. Please spread the word via social media or just word of mouth. It means a lot. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.